What happened to her was so random and so uncalled for that it'll leave you scared every time you go outside and walk past somebody. But before we begin today's video, if you're a fan of true crime stories delivered in story format, then I'd highly suggest you subscribe. But with all that being said, let's begin. One day, a girl named Jamie woke up from the night before and realised that it's almost time for school. So quickly she got ready and then went downstairs to have breakfast and then quickly left the house. Now she's got on the bus and is heading to school. When she gets off the school bus, she notices a parked car next to the parking lot. Obviously, since this is a car park, there's a lot of cars around. But for some reason, this car stood out. She looked closer and she could clearly see a guy sitting in the car, and he did not look like the right age to be in school. He looked much older. She thought it was weird, but she needed to get a class quickly, so she forgot about it and left it. Now on that same day, a guy named Patterson woke up from the night before. So he got up, got ready, and went downstairs to get some food. After eating breakfast, he got outside and went into his car and started to drive off. It was not long before he got to his destination and he thought, I'm just gonna stay here and watch. So for the next 30 minutes, that's exactly what he did. To give you a bit of backstory on Patterson, he was a 27-year-old man going through some rough patches in his life. For him growing up, it wasn't really enjoyable because around about 2007, his parents got a divorce, and this divorce really tore up Patterson. But a couple of years later, when he turned 20, he decided that I'm going to join the Marines. But it wouldn't be long, about a month actually, he would get discharged. So now going forward back to where Patterson was sitting in his car, he finally decided that sitting in his car was a bit boring, and then sped off. But a couple of hours later, he came back to that exact same spot, and this is where the story really gets twisted. As he got to the same position as he was in the car park, he noticed that there was a school bus coming, and where the school bus stopped, children were waiting to get on. But he noticed a young girl. She had blonde hair and green eyes and had an infectious smile, and it was right there and then where he said to himself, I'm going to do it. And so he watched this girl get onto the bus and drive away. But instead of staying in that car park, he decided to follow this bus, and as he's driving right behind this bus, he's thinking of all the ways that he could execute his plan, until the bus stops and out comes that girl. And as she's running, Patterson's watching to see what house she lives in. So quickly he takes in all the details such as cameras and neighbouring houses. Once done that, he drives off. So a day later, Patterson comes to that exact house, but he doesn't park near the house, he parks a block away, so it's not looking suspicious. So he gets out of his car and then walks to the house, and as he's looking, he notices that all the lights are off. Now Patterson is gambling on the fact that nobody in the house is home, and he can make it a quick in and out situation. So as he walks up to the patio, he tries the doorknob and it's locked. In the back of his mind, he kind of knew that was going to be the case, so he had a plan B. And what was that plan B? It was to go around the house and try the back doors. So as he gets to the back door, as soon as he tries to unlock the door, he hears voices in the house. So in a quick panic, he just bolts out of there and rushes towards his car and then drives off. And as he's driving away, Patterson's hands are shaking in fear, and just adrenaline's just going through his veins. And as he's driving his car, still shaking, he begins to laugh because he likes this feeling. So a couple of days later, he would come back to the house, park in that exact same spot, and this time, as he's going to the door, he hears voices in the house. So once again, he bolts to his car and drives off. But instead of feeling the fear that he felt, this time he was angry, and what he did next was truly horrific. But before we continue, if you've enjoyed today's video, then I'd highly suggest you press that subscribe button. But with all that being said, let's continue. So at this point, Patterson was angry and he just wanted to go through with his plan. So on October 15th, in the middle of the night, Patterson would practically drive onto the family's lawn and would get out of his car, and also he was wearing a full blacked out outfit with a ski mask on. So once he opens his trunk, he brings out his shotgun that he brought along with him. So now he's stomping towards the door and then he starts banging up. With all the commotion that's going on, a man in his mid-50s comes to the door. He doesn't open it, but on the left and right of the door there's glass panels that aren't clear, but you can see the silhouette of a person. So Patterson and this man could kind of see each other. So remember, it's midnight and he couldn't really see anything, and the man's house was quite dark as well. So he hits a flashlight and notices that Patterson's holding a gun, and automatically he thinks it's a police officer and he asks if he can see their badge. And of course, in a pit of rage, Patterson wasn't having any of it, and he was just shouting at the man to open the door. But of course this man wasn't budging, so they get into this little screaming match before Patterson loses it completely. He shoots this shotgun through the door and killing the man instantly, and then he shoots another one into the lock, which opens the door. So as the door flings open, Patterson sees the man that he's just killed lying on the floor. So he walks over it and then starts looking. So he quickly takes a full check of the downstairs area to make sure that there's no witnesses. Once he does that, he goes upstairs and checks the upstairs. He checks every room and every room's empty until there was one room, the bathroom. So he tries to open the door and the door doesn't budge. He tries again doesn't budge. So now with all of his might, he hits the door with a big budge and it finally opens. And in the bathroom there's a woman and her daughter sitting in the bathtub, just crying and hoping that the man would leave them alone. So the man looks at the daughter and the mother and then takes the daughter and then proceeds to shoot the mother in the head, killing her instantly. Now of course the daughter's just watched her mother get killed and she's screaming hysterically, but all the man does is look at the girl and just say, "You have beautiful blonde hair and it's going to get ruined if you keep this up, Jamie." So now Jamie's stunned and she's like, "How does this man know my name and why is he going after me?" But it wouldn't take long before Patterson drags her downstairs and into his car, and he puts her in his boot and then locks the boot, making that a grand total of 4 minutes that Patterson went into the house, killed the dad, killed the mother, stole the daughter and drove off. Altogether was 4 minutes. As he pulls onto the main road, he begins to drive forward, and not even 20 seconds later he sees cops flying down, and the police would later say that yes, we remember going past that car, but since we were in a rush we didn't think much of it. So Jamie, who was still in the trunk, would hear the sirens as they come close and then fade away into the background. Patterson would drive just 70 miles away to his house, where he would keep Jamie a prisoner. So for the next 3 months, investigators, police and everybody in the town was just looking for Jamie, and even though they were searching for Jamie, they didn't really have any high hopes of just finding her alive, because in a lot of kidnapping cases, usually the kidnapper would just kill the prisoner later on, so the whole community was praying that this case wasn't one of them. But since a whole town was searching for this one girl, the news quickly spread like wildfire, and quickly national TV began to come to this town and began to broadcast their findings. But little did they know, just about 70 miles away was where Jamie was being held as a prisoner. So when they got to Patterson's house, Jamie noticed that it was dirty, and the house itself was quite isolated and it was in the middle of the woods, so no one really visited him, and this is why his house was the perfect house for Jamie to stay in. When they got into the house, Patterson made Jamie burn off all of her clothes, and he would also burn off the gloves that he was wearing. Once done that, Patterson would give Jamie his sister's PJs. Once she put the PJs up, Patterson told Jamie to go underneath his bed in the house, and once she got underneath his bed, he gave her a blanket and a pillow, and then promptly barricaded the bed. And well, that was it. She was essentially just ignored, and Jamie was always warned that if she tried to escape, bad things would happen to her. So of course she listened, because she just witnessed her parents get killed right in front of her, so she knew what he was capable of. So she complied and stayed under the bed, not even thinking about trying to leave, because at this point at least she's alive and maybe the police could find her. So for the stretches of 8 to 12 hours she would go through no food, no water and no bathroom breaks. She would just stay under the bed, and again was just always neglected, because when Patterson decided that he wanted to take her, he never really had a plan, so all he could do was just neglect her. So for 2 weeks of this constant routine of just laying under a bed for an uncomfortable amount of hours, Patterson would just be more on edge, because in those 2 weeks he thought he was the most vulnerable, and he always left a shotgun outside of Jamie's room, because if anything went wrong and the police showed up to his house, that shotgun would be used on them and her. As days turned into weeks and no one came for Jamie, she lost all hope, and Patterson began to get more confident. So about a couple of more weeks later, Patterson was now fully confident that yes, I got away with this crime. And he would actually have guests coming over to the house, and Jamie would still be under the bed, listening to all the people freely walking. And for the next 87 days, Jamie would just stay under this bed, being neglected. And not to mention, she couldn't really get over the fact that her parents had just been murdered right in front of her. So of course, combined all that together, this really took a toll on her. And even if she wanted to escape, it was practically impossible, because Patterson was always in his house, and there was never a time where Patterson would leave his house. And even if he did, he wouldn't be out for long. But there was this one time where he needed to visit his grandparents, and before he was about to leave, he aggressively told Jamie that if she tried to escape, bad things would happen to her. So once he left, Jamie was contemplating that if she doesn't escape now, she'll probably never get this chance. So as she was about to leave, she heard the door open again, and then there comes in Patterson. So quickly she goes back in and then puts everything back as it was. So as time went on, Patterson got more confident that he had gotten away with this crime. So he applied to different jobs to see if he can make extra cash, and amazingly, he got a job interview. So the day came on his job interview, he got up, he got dressed, had his breakfast, and before he left, he did the exact same thing that he always does. He went into Jamie's room and aggressively told her that if she tried to escape, bad things would happen to her. But instead of usually complying, Jamie had enough of being captive and just decided that she's gonna leave. So as soon as Patterson left, Jamie pushed the barricades off, which was a bit heavy for her because she was small in stature. So once she got out, she stood up and just bolted for the door. So when she gets to the door, she puts on shoes that are clearly too big for her, and she puts them on the wrong way round, but she doesn't care. And of course she doesn't know where she is, but all she does is just run and and hope for the best. On that same day, a woman decided that she's going to take her dog out for a walk. She would usually take the dog out for a walk a bit later, but she decided that she's going to do it a bit earlier today. So once they get out the door, they begin their little journey. And by the way, this was winter, so there's snow everywhere and it was freezing. And it wasn't long before she started to see a young girl starting to run towards her. And she could see the girl running and she had barely any clothes on. And she was running a bit weird because she had her shoes on the wrong way around. It was Jamie running towards her. So Jamie runs towards this woman, and when she gets there, she begins to just scream for help. And the woman knew instantly that this is the missing girl that had been gone for ages because she's seen it on the news. So she gives Jamie a big hug and tells her that she's okay now, she's safe. So she holds her hand, and then they go to the neighbor's house and they explain to the neighbors that this is the girl that has been missing for months and that we need to call the police. And when the police arrived, they were dumbfounded because they were shocked on how close Jamie was to them and they couldn't find her. And the police don't really have that much time because Patterson's probably coming back home right now, and if he finds out that she's escaped, he's gonna go ballistic. So 20 minutes went by and Patterson came back from his interview, and straight away he noticed that Jamie is gone. So he follows the footsteps that Jamie left, and not even 2 minutes into his detective work, he's surrounded by police. And of course he quickly surrenders and then gets arrested, and he would get a life sentence without the possibility of parole. So he will die in prison, and we'll probably never know why he did this, because usually when someone gets kidnapped or murdered, there's intentions behind it, whether that be monetary gain or just pure anger against that person. But with Patterson, he just decided that he wanted to steal this girl, and he even went to the lengths of killing both of her parents right in front of her. And once captured, he turns around and tells the police that I don't know why I did this, which of course is really strange and practically terrifying, but I guess we'll never know. But that's the end of today's video. If you're a fan of true crime stories delivered in story format, then I'd highly suggest you subscribe, as I upload once a week and I'm trying to push out for 2 times a week. And also leave a comment about your thoughts about this case. But with all that being said, thank you for watching, and yeah, goodbye.